The content discussed in this video is presented strictly for the purposes of commentary, criticism, and review. All copyrighted materials referenced are used under the doctrine of fair use, as outlined in Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act. This channel does not claim ownership of any third-party works discussed. Views expressed are analytical, not personal endorsements of the material. The goal here is analysis and critique. Nothing more, nothing less. Let's get into it.
Welcome to today's book dive. We are looking at a book today called The Forbidden Religion by Jose M. Heron Aragon. And I feel like we need to put a massive asterisk in this right up front.
Oh, definitely. A huge asterisk.
Yeah, because the philosophical and cosmological architecture in this text, it basically flips almost every single religious and cultural narrative we have completely upside down. It is a profoundly polarizing framework.
Right, and that is a very important point to start with. The source material we are unpacking today contains highly controversial, deeply non-traditional religious and political frameworks. So we want to be absolutely clear with you, the listener. We are not here to adopt this belief system or endorse these views or take any sides.
No, not at all.
We are acting purely as impartial tour guides through a very alternative map of reality. We just want to examine it through an analytical lens to see exactly how this highly unusual architecture is constructed.
Exactly. We are just exploring the map the author has drawn. And I want to pose a question to you right now to set the stage. What if everything you were taught about good and evil, light and dark, heaven and hell, was completely reversed? What if the good guys in the stories you grew up with were actually the wardens of a cosmic prison?
And the villains were the true liberators.
Yes, it's wild.
It is the ultimate paradigm shift. And the foundation of this entire shift lies in the author's specific definition of gnosis. Because the foundation here isn't just spiritual knowledge in the traditional sense, it's framed almost like a cosmic red pill.
Right, a dangerous truth.
Exactly. A transformative truth meant to shatter a deeply ingrained illusion and wake humanity up from an induced slumber.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the author argues that this primordial gnosis is so potent, so inherently dangerous to the established order of the universe, that it's been hidden and persecuted throughout history. And the reason it's considered so dangerous is because of the dual cosmology it reveals. This is where the text completely breaks away from almost every major world religion. The premise is that the universe is split into two utterly irreconcilable realms,
governed by two entirely different entities. Let's start with the realm we currently inhabit.
Okay.
Traditional religions usually maintain that the creator of the physical universe is a good, perfect, and just being, right?
Yeah. The creation itself is inherently beautiful.
Right, but the author of The Forbidden Religion claims the exact opposite. He states that the entity that created matter, time, and the physical universe, often referred to in the text as the Demiurge,
or even Satan, he claims this creator is an inept, oppressive, and ignorant force.
Wow.
In this worldview, matter and time are not a divine gift. They are intrinsically corrupt. The physical world isn't a testing ground. It is considered a literal hell.
So in this framework, the Big Bang wasn't a miracle of creation. It was a mistake.
A huge mistake.
It was the exact moment this flawed creator exhaled what the author calls the breath of time to create this limited physical bubble. But then there is the second realm. Above and entirely separate from this flawed creator is what the text calls the unknowable God.
The true God.
Right. Existing completely outside of space and time, in an infinite, eternal plane of what the author describes as antimatter.
And we should probably clarify that terminology right away.
Good idea.
When the author says antimatter, he isn't talking about particle physics at CERN. He's using it as a metaphysical framework. He's describing a spiritual essence that is fundamentally violently opposed to the very atoms of our physical universe. It's an essence that literally cannot coexist.
To really grasp this, I think it helps to visualize the diagram provided in the text.
Oh, the two boxes.
Yeah. Imagine two distinct boxes. The top box represents the eternal, uncreated plane of the unknowable God. This box contains pure spirit. Right. And below it is the second box, representing the limited, ephemeral, created plane of the Demiurge. This bottom box contains physical matter, body, and soul.
And between these two boxes is a barrier.
Exactly. With a line representing a bridge. a bridge that must be built to liberate the spirit from the bottom box back to the top. It's a very stark visual. Top box is eternal antimatter spirit. Bottom box is physical matter, time, body, and soul.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely upends the traditional idea of a perfect creation.
Yeah, it really does.
The author asks us to look at the natural world, a world where animals must literally rip each other apart to survive, where disease is rampant, where the entire biological system relies on constant consumption and destruction.
Exactly. He argues that the universe is flawed precisely because its architect is flawed. The Demiurge is depicted as a god who experiments through trial and error.
Right, like the dinosaurs.
Yes, the text uses the extinction of the dinosaurs as an example, framing them not as a natural phase of evolution, but as a stupid idea.
A massive mistake.
A mistake the Demiurge had to wipe out so he could start over with a new experiment.
Which brings us to his ultimate ongoing experiment, humanity. Because in this framework, the anatomy of a human being is the very site of this cosmic conflict. We are not just made of a body and a soul, according to the text. We are actually a three-part body, soul, and spirit.
This distinction is absolutely crucial to understanding the text's entire philosophy. The body and the soul are both creations of the Demiurge.
Right.
The text points to the traditional Genesis narrative, where it says the Creator formed man from the dust of the ground that represents the body, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life,
which represents the soul. Both of these elements are made of matter and created time. They are designed to be subservient, to evolve blindly through nature, and eventually to merge back into their creator, the Demiurge.
But then there's the third element, and this is the massive aha moment of the book.
The spirit.
The spirit. The author reveals that the spirit is not created by the Demiurge at all. The spirit is an uncreated spark of that divine antimatter stolen from the realm of the unknowable God.
And this spirit has been chained to the human soul, completely against its will.
It's a hostile takeover on a microscopic spiritual level.
The author actually describes it as the cruelest form of torture imaginable. This pure, eternal antimatter spark is crucified within the impure matter of the human body and soul.
But why would the Demiurge do this?
The text posits a fascinating, albeit intensely dark, theory. The Demiurge uses the infinite, uncreated energy of these captive spirits as a battery.
A battery?
Yeah, he needed that immense alien power to drive the evolution of the hominid into modern man. Without that stolen spirit acting as an evolutionary engine, the author claims humans would have remained just another animal, entirely bound by base instincts.
A literal battery of evolution. It reminds me of the concept of the Matrix.
Very much so.
Where humans are just copper tops powering a machine they don't understand. And I want to connect this directly to you, the listener. Have you ever felt a deep, inexplicable internal conflict? A profound sense of alienation from the world around you? A feeling that you just don't belong here? Almost like an imposter syndrome of the soul.
I think a lot of people feel that.
In the view of the forbidden religion, that feeling is not a psychological quirk or anxiety. That is your uncreated spirit revolting against its imprisonment in the body and the soul.
It's the antimatter spark, reacting with absolute hostility to the material hell it's trapped inside. That internal friction is the core of the human condition in this text.
It's a constant tug of war.
Yeah, the soul wants to surrender, to find comfort, and to love the material world, while the spirit despises the material world and wants nothing more than to escape back to the unknowable God.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you accept this premise that the creator of the world is actually an oppressive warden, and the physical world is a maximum security prison,
then every single mythological story you've ever been told has to be reread backwards.
Exactly. We all know the standard Sunday school version of the Garden of Eden, a paradise lost through tragic disobedience. But here, Eden is reframed as a prison of ignorance.
Adam and Eve were created as blind, docile servants,
completely unaware of their true origins or the fact that they possessed an eternal spirit.
And the serpent in the garden is completely recontextualized. The text explicitly identifies the supine as Lucifer,
which translates to bearer of light.
Right, but Lucifer isn't the deceiver here. Lucifer is presented as a Black Ops liberator.
I love that phrase, Black Ops liberator.
Well, it fits. He's an antimatter messenger sent from the unknowable God. Lucifer infiltrates this material hell at great personal sacrifice to bring the forbidden fruit, which represents gnosis. The serpent gives them the knowledge to wake up, open their eyes, and realize they are enslaved.
And the text points out the ultimate irony in the Genesis story. The Creator threatened Adam and Eve, saying if they ate the fruit, they would die. The Supan said they wouldn't die, but their eyes would be opened.
And indeed, they didn't die physically.
They woke up. The author uses this specific plot point to argue that the Creator God is a deceiver who relies on fear, and the serpent was the one telling the truth.
It's a complete inversion of morality, and it extends right into the next generation. Look at the story of Cain and Abel.
Right.
Normally, Abel is the good, obedient son, and Cain is the jealous first murderer. But according to this text, Abel represents the complacent, animalistic soul.
Born entirely of the flesh.
Yes, and he eagerly offered blood sacrifices, dead animals, to the Demiurge, which the Demiurge naturally loved because it fed the material system of death. Cain, however, is considered the hero of the spirit. The text claims Cain was actually conceived by Eve and the serpent Lucifer. Therefore, Cain possesses a profound, awakened spiritual nature.
So Cain refuses to offer blood sacrifices. He offers vegetables, almost as an insult to the Demiurge's system of blood and death. And when Cain kills Abel, the text interprets this not as a petty murder born of jealousy, but as a deeply symbolic, supreme act of liberation. The immortal spirit destroying the subservient, complacent soul. Cain frees himself from the Creator's loss.
And the infamous mark of Cain. It's reinterpreted not as a curse or a stigma of sin, but as a badge of immortal power.
Wow.
The author describes it as a physical hardening, a callus that signifies the spirit has taken full possession of the body, making Cain untouchable by the Demiurge. He becomes a sovereign entity.
And the subversions don't stop in the Old Testament. Let's talk about Judas Iscariot, the ultimate traitor in Western history.
This one is really wild.
In the Forbidden Religion, Judas is arguably the greatest hero of the New Testament. The text views Jesus Christ as another messenger of the unknowable God sent into the Matrix to bring gnosis. But to escape the material prison and complete his mission, Christ needed a catalyst to break his physical bonds.
And the text frames Judas not as a traitor corrupted by silver, but as an advanced initiate.
Right. Judas intentionally took on the horrific burden of being hated by humanity for all eternity in order to assist Christ in escaping the physical body via the crucifixion.
It forces you to look at the concept of heroism from an entirely alien perspective. If the material world is a prism, then actions that disrupt or destroy the bonds of that world are viewed as heroic.
Regardless of how terrifying or immoral they look to the uninitiated.
Exactly. Judas's subsequent suicide isn't framed as despair. It's framed as a liberated warrior, leaving the material plane on his own terms because his specific mission was complete.
If you follow that logic, that every heroic act is actually a rebellion against the physical world, it completely changes the math on life and death. Which brings us to how this system supposedly traps us after death, assuming we haven't liberated ourselves like Judas.
The matrix of reincarnation?
Yes, we need to talk about the matrix of reincarnation. Usually, when we hear about reincarnation in modern spirituality, it's pitched as a beautiful, progressive journey of the soul, learning lessons over many lifetimes until it finally reaches enlightenment.
Not in this worldview. Here, reincarnation is a meat grinder.
A meat grinder.
It is a torturous mechanical cycle designed by the Demiurge to systematically break the will of the captive spirit. The author argues that when the physical body dies, the soul is extracted. But because the spirit is chained to the soul, it is dragged along with it into the afterlife.
And the afterlife here isn't a reward. The author calls it a continuation of hell. The soul is punished or conditioned until it is forced back into a new physical body to suffer the friction of matter all over again.
And the point of all this suffering? What does the Demiurge get out of constantly recycling these captive spirits?
Submission. Pure submission. The Demiurge uses the pain, the fear, and the manufactured concept of karma across successive lives to exhaust the individual.
Wow.
The goal is to make the person finally give up their rebellious spirit, surrender their individuality, and accept merging with the Creator. When someone finally breaks and says, "I surrender my will to God," the text views this as spiritual death.
So the Demiurge has won.
Yes, absorbing the soul and taking the spirit back to use as a battery in another captive.
To keep this cycle running smoothly, to make sure people don't realize they are batteries, the author claims there is a great conspiracy maintained in the physical world.
Overarching control grid.
Exactly. Human institutions, media, culture, and especially traditional religions, are all perfectly designed to keep humanity distracted, busy, and most importantly, asleep. You work, you consume media, you follow religious dogmas that tell you to be obedient, to fear punishment, and to unconditionally love your Creator. All of it, according to the text, is a carefully orchestrated illusion to prevent you from ever looking inward and realizing you have an uncreated spirit.
What's fascinating here is the author's analysis of esoteric groups, specifically what he calls the White Lodge versus the Black Order.
Oh, right.
In many New Age and esoteric traditions, the White Lodge or White Brotherhood is seen as the pinnacle of evolved good beings, guiding humanity toward light and harmony. But the Forbidden Religion argues that the White Lodge is actually composed of the highest agents of the Demiurge. Their job is to keep humans docile.
They promote concepts like universal love, global unity, and spiritual evolution.
Right. All concepts that soften the ego and ultimately lead the soul to surrender and merge with the Demiurge.
And on the flip side, you have the Black Order, which sounds incredibly ominous.
It does, and the author acknowledges that. The Black Order represents the true warriors of the spirit. But to an asleep human, they appear terrifying.
Because they're disruptive.
Exactly. Because these warriors operate with that antimatter energy and possess an absolute hatred for the impure material world, their presence is intensely aggressive and disruptive to everything physical.
Wow.
The author points out that an asleep mind naturally interprets true, blinding spiritual light as darkness, and the deceptive, comforting material darkness of the Demiurge as light. Therefore, the true saviors are perceived as monsters, while the ultimate wardens are worshipped as saints. It's like living in a photographic negative. Everything is exactly the reverse of what it appears to be. Comfort is a trap, and disruption is salvation. So how does one actually escape this photographic negative?
Right, the million-dollar question.
If we are caught in this three-part trap of body, soul, and spirit, and reincarnation is just a cycle of torture, what is the path of liberation, according to this gnosis?
The author states that every human eventually faces an ultimate choice, and there is no middle ground. You either take the path of the right hand, the path of the soul, which leads to surrendering your individuality and merging with the Demiurge, or you take the path of the left hand, the path of the spirit. This requires absolute rebellion, strengthening your own individual self to an extreme degree, and fighting for liberation.
And this path is spirit requires a very specific type of initiation.
Exactly. And we need to clarify some terminology here to understand the goal of this initiation. The text contrasts standard religious goals, like samadhi in Eastern traditions, with the Gnostic goal. Samadhi generally means dissolving into the oneness of God or the universe. Think of it like a drop of water falling into the ocean.
It's comforting, but the drop ceases to exist as an individual.
Right. Gnosis aims for the exact opposite, a state called kaivalya. In this context, kaivalya means absolute total separation. Separation. You are not trying to dissolve your ego into the ocean. You are trying to freeze that drop of water into an unbreakable diamond so the ocean can never absorb it again. You are forging your spiritual self into an impenetrable fortress that completely rejects the universe and its creator.
The author actually gives practical advice for how to begin this process of separation, what he calls self-initiation. He suggests that before you go to sleep, you mentally repeat a specific formula to start detaching the spirit from the soul.
Right, the nightly practice.
Yeah, the phrase he uses is something like, I want to separate myself from the Creator God and His creation. I want to separate myself from matter and time. I want to separate myself from my body and soul. I want to unite myself with my spirit. He claims this acts as a targeted nightly strike against the chains of the Demiurge.
Which raises an important question. What happens if you succeed? If you actually manage to awaken the spirit and win the internal battle against the Demiurge's hold on your soul? We reach the endgame of this entire philosophy.
The endgame.
The liberating spirit doesn't just float away ethereally. The antimatter fire of the spirit effectively takes hostage the material body and soul, transmuting them into something entirely new.
The text calls this transmuted state the Vajra.
Yes, the Vajra. The author describes it as a divine, indestructible antimatter body. It is red as blood and harder than a diamond. The formerly impure mud and breath of the Demiurge are converted into a glorious, eternal vessel for the spirit. It's the ultimate act of cosmic theft and revenge. The spirit uses the very prison cell it was locked inside to forge indestructible armor.
So what does this all mean? Once you are clad in indestructible red Vajra, what do you actually do?
You have two choices.
Right, you can simply leave. You can abandon this material hell, cross that bridge in the diagram, and return to the infinite plane of the unknowable God, never to look back at the physical universe again. Or you can choose to stay. You can remain in the physical world as an immortal, uncreated warrior, operating behind enemy lines to help wake up the remaining captive spirits and bring down the Demiurge system from the inside out.
It is a profound, incredibly intense, and completely radical conclusion to a text that systematically dismantles reality as we know it.
It really is. Let's take a breath and summarize this journey. The Forbidden Religion is a text that completely shatters conventional morality. It tells us that the universe is a flawed prison. Our bodies and souls are the chains, and our uncreated spirit is the prisoner, used as an evolutionary battery by an ignorant architect.
It urges a total reevaluation of reality, obedience, and the nature of existence itself. And again, while this is extremely controversial, and we are simply analyzing the architecture of these ideas, exploring such radical texts is a powerful exercise.
Definitely.
It forces us to use critical thinking and allows us to see how deeply subjective our definitions of good and evil, light and dark, can truly be when viewed from a different vantage point.
I think the real value in analyzing a framework this extreme, regardless of what you believe, is that it aggressively shakes out of our default assumptions. Which brings me to a final lingering thought for you to consider today. If we entertain the author's premise for just a moment, the idea that our physical reality, our routines, and our culture are all part of a carefully constructed illusion designed to keep our minds comfortable, busy, and asleep.
Right.
What is the single, everyday habit, routine, or deeply held assumption in your own life that might be the strongest invisible chain anchoring you to that illusion?
That's a great question.
If you had to identify the one thing that keeps you most distracted from looking inward, what would it be?
Wow, that is definitely something to chew on as you go about your day. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly book dive. Remember to stay curious, keep asking the hard questions, and never stop questioning the world around you. Catch you next time.
That's all for today's book dive. If something we said made you think, or made you uncomfortable, that's exactly the point. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Hit subscribe so you never miss a dive, and if you liked this one, the like button does more than you think. We'll see you in the next chapter.